The reality is this is all about eyeballs. So where people spend time, that's the opportunity to get in front of them.
Welcome to Velocitize Talks. I'm Andy North, and my guest today is Colin Barnard, Managing Director, Criteo. Colin, thank you so much for being here.
Thanks, Andy.
You've been a digital marketer for most of your career, and you've been at some big name brands like Google and Peugeot before joining Criteo. Tell us about Criteo and how it's supporting marketers in the current ecosystem.
Our company has become a specialist over many years in supporting particularly retailers and find customers. And so traditionally that was through retargeting. And for those people who'd been onto a retailer's website, we would find them again as they browse the internet. Increasingly, though, we are getting amazing at finding people who are like the people that are your normal customers and will be able to get you, your brand, your name, your retailing brand or travel company or whatever it happens to be in front of customers. And we do that with amazing efficacy to the point where I would suggest that Criteo is better at doing that than any of our competitors. And I would include Google, who's a formidable tech company.
If you had to pinpoint one thing that sets Criteo apart from its competitors, what would that be?
I think I'd say the shopper graph. The many years that Criteo has been doing what it's done very well in the past has built up an immense catalog of the not only the types of people who purchase items and where to find them online, but also to match up what products they might be interested in based on their browsing behavior. And that's the type of thing that I think most of us understand Amazon is very good at. So that kind of people who buy this also buy this. Criteo is bar none the best at doing that, in my opinion. And then providing those ads on the fly dynamically so that you can see those alternative products. And if we look at some of our main campaigns that we run with advertisers, I would say more than 50% of the products that tend to be bought in the end are not the ones that the customer actually started looking for, but the ones that we recommended as a result of our recommendation engine. And that's all part of the shopper graph.
Rebranding is always a challenge, and I understand that Criteo has gone through a rebranding recently. Tell us about that and how it has evolved from just a retargeting company.
I think most people in the industry would know our core value is retargeting, but beyond that, as I've mentioned about the recommendation engine, the shopper graph, etc., it was time to recognize what's at our core, what's our real strength. And our strength is the billions of identities and shoppers that we see every month, and to realize that we're not a retargeting company, but our power is in data, and that data is around not people who browse online or who like things online, but people who actually buy things online. And so we call that the commerce audience, and therefore we're now the commerce media company. And I think it was important to visibly and visually represent that change as moving away from just a performance background into something much, much more.
There's been a lot of focus lately on privacy issues all around the globe with companies that are, having people's data. How is Criteo addressing that?
This latest change, or these latest changes, have been happening over a few years now. They've been principally led by Apple, and whilst I have huge admiration for Apple, it's very clear to me that they have no real stake in the free internet and ad-funded models. So it means that there's every benefit for them to make things more difficult for everybody else. And by doing that, to try and push the debate on to, like a world where there is absolutely no insight into the behavior of users on your website. However, I think the core of that is the sentiment is right. I think the execution has been somewhat draconian from Apple, but that's caused Google, who I know, when I was at Google, this was a core struggle, is to how do you look after the small little people who have, maybe a small little website and monetize that content. It might be, I don't know, like Andy's Cameras or something like that, and you might have a small website that you want to monetize so that you can keep investing in that content. The benefit of doing that and having cookies was that advertisers could therefore understand a lot more about their users, not at a personal level, but at a behavioral level on the website. And that now needs to come to an end because of the trend within the industry and the trend, to be fair, from consumers themselves. And so we're now going to move to a world where we're going to be much more reliant on those people who have a direct connection with their customers. And those first-party data sets are going to become much more valuable. And also those publishers who really understand a lot more about their audience, they will become a lot more, or the information that they have and the browsing behavior of their users will become a lot more important to them. So I perceive that we're going to see the industry evolve. It won't be the same as before, but that's a good thing. I like change. I'm sure that the end landing point will be better for consumers and probably eventually better for publishers and advertisers. I think there'll just be a lot of change and uncertainty as we go through that changeover. But I love change. I love ambiguity. I love trying to figure things out. So I'm excited about this, and Criteo has been planning for this future for a very long time. Privacy
is evolving. Are there any other industry-wide issues that you see changing and evolving in a similar fashion?
So I think one of the things I've seen over many years that we've still not really solved for, and I think still needs to be solved for, is to be able to value those digital views, the interaction, the more emotional elements, and to be able to provide some sort of currency around that makes advertisers feel comfortable. I can't tell you the number of times that performance advertisers, the ones who tend to advertise just on a sort of last click basis, say, I feel like I'm losing my brand identity, or alternatively, those who understand it and try, but then someone in the organization says, but what are the metrics? How do I know this is working? And I think that's a real challenge. This has been going on for many, many years, and it still hasn't been solved for. We get a little bit nearer probably every year, and I guess it's about being less wrong each year than being right. But I still think it's something the industry needs to solve for.
There have been several trends lately that have taken off that involve advertising to one degree or another. Digital video, retail media, contextual advertising are just a few. How do you see these continuing to grow, and how can marketers continue to adapt to these new trends?
The reality is this is all about eyeballs. So where people spend time, that's the opportunity to get in front of them. And the challenges that as we've moved away from those places that we knew well and were relatively few, the few handful of TV stations, the outdoor sites, the popular radio stations, the main press, that it was easy to find your majority of your audience in 1, 2, or 3 or 4 places. And that has become harder and harder. And so what you see is an aggregation of either content or a concentration of audiences into different environments. So you just have to go and find people in different areas.
If you were to break out your crystal ball, how do you see advertising evolving in the next 5 to 10 years? Do you continue to see this micro-targeting? Will we go back to some form of broadcasting? How will it evolve?
I don't see that people will tolerate or understand why they're now going to see these ads which are less relevant to them and be happy with that outcome. So the idea that we get rid of third-party cookies and everybody's world becomes better, I think is constrained by the fact that most of the advertising most of the content is produced from the funding from advertisers, and so that won't stop. You will still see ads. They will just be potentially slightly less relevant to you than before, and so I don't see that users will want to accept that. They won't respond well to it. And so we will find ways to make ads just as relevant as before. We'll just have to be a lot more creative and open and transparent about how we do that.
What's the best professional advice that you've ever given or received?
Don't be afraid of trying and failing, because you learn more from your failures than you do from your successes, typically. And as long as you're not going to bet the farm or do something so risky or at the bounds of acceptability, then what's there to lose? I think people are often afraid of trying because they assume that their boss or someone in the organization will react in a very adverse way. Whereas the reality is, I would much rather have tried and failed to do something and be recognized for having taken a risk and to try and innovate than to go for status quo.
Is there a book, a blog, or a podcast that you'd like to share with our viewers or recommend?
I've got into a riff on YouTube of watching TED Ed videos, and I can't tell you the number of things I've learned from small little facts about nature to how bridges are built or why how we're going to solve for the energy transition to clean energy. So I'd recommend anyone to go onto YouTube and watch the TED Ed videos.
My guest today has been Colin Barnard, Managing Director, Criteo. Colin, thank you so much for sharing your wisdom with us.
Thanks, Andy.